Hello and welcome to the P.O.P. podcast. I'm your host, Jason Sirotin, joined as always by my co-host and friend, Scott Haley. Scott, how the hell are you doing?
I'm doing good. Nice to be back again. We've got a repeat offender on the P.O.P. podcast here.
He promised to bring more value, and that's what I'm expecting. More value.
So we'll call this Fitterling DM 2.0.
Dun, dun, dun.
There we go.
Cue the graphic. David, great to have you on the show. David works at DentalMonitoring. Last time we asked him what his title was, and he says, geez, I wish I knew. He does
Still
a little
hasn't
bit
changed.
of everything. David's got some interesting info on kind of where ortho is at, the business of ortho, what dental monitoring is up to. So let's jump right in. David, what is new in your world? What's the most interesting thing that's come across your desk since we talked last?
Well, considering we only talked a few weeks ago, not too much has changed. I think diving deeper into practice metrics is something that we need to continue to focus on. I think understanding the value that DM could potentially bring to a practice, and more so just understanding how to analyze your book of business to know if DM is a fit for your practice is probably something that is worthy of discussion, as well as talking about a couple of technologies that we don't tend to market overly to our customers and or potential customers out there, such as adaptive scanning and Smart STL. Even though those are more focused on the aligner side, and monitoring braces is our strength. I think it's a very big differentiator compared to what other monitoring platforms have. So I think just talking about a couple of those would be of worthy cause, and understanding the business of ortho in general.
Yeah, well, let's start with Smart STL, right? So I'm going to give you my layman's understanding of it, and then I want you to correct me because I'm assuming I'm going to need to be corrected. So the way I would describe it is, if I am on the DM platform and I have a patient that's out there with aligners, I can use the Smart STL file to do a refinement scan without them coming back in to actually physically get scanned. Is that
correct?
It's really
you hit the nail on the head. In the late 2018 and early 2019, we built the technology to develop the Smart STL, and really the Smart STL is just a regenerated STL file of the original, with some proprietary technology. It first started with Invisalign, and they ran a pilot and tested out the technology. I think my belief is they realized that Smart STL would probably hinder some of their iTero sales, and I think in the last quarterly business report earnings call, I think iTero made up about 35% of their revenue, approximately. And so if you don't need additional iTero scanners or scanners in general, there's obviously going to be some challenges with that if that's a key driver of your business. So we started working with Ormco, because Ormco at the time they weren't partnered with a scanner per se, but they wanted to wait till the FDA got certified. When we got the Smart STL certified by the FDA for regulatory purposes. And so in 2024, we finished the validation of Smart STL and our technology as a whole with the FDA. One of the strongest reporting on the FDA study was the accuracy of our Smart STL. So it comes down to about a 0.2 millimeter discrepancy. Let me phrase that. It comes down to a 0.02 millimeter discrepancy with an original iOS scan and a Smart STL. And so since the launch of that, we partnered, with Ormco, and we're working on stuff with OrthoFX and ULab and Smarty over in Europe, Angel Line. We've got full integrations with. One of the beauties is that, if you're a Spark user, and I know P.O.P has a lot of Ormco advocates within their organization. Once you once you start using DM in conjunction with the approver software, it'll automatically pull the iOS scan into our platform. So if a patient gets to their next to last aligner or their last aligner and the doctor looks at it and says, I'm going to need a refinement scan, they click a button, we regenerate a Smart STL, we drop that Smart STL into the approver software. The doctor then can design a new ClinCheck or a new diagnostic of that patient, hit approve, and we'll just drop ship the aligners directly back to the practice. I think in the future, we could see manufacturers drop shipping the aligners directly to the patient. I think we have some practices that will just automatically ship. Like once they get the aligners, they'll just ship the aligners directly to the patient. So there's a lot of value to that when you look at it from a financial perspective of a clinic and eliminating unnecessary appointments.
Yeah, I think that's totally amazing. And then maybe this would be a good bridge to like talking about the finances of a practice, but like what's the current data show that every time a patient shows up into the practice, it's what it used to be $350 every time they sat down in the chair.
Right. So to me that there's some misconception with that data. So there's cost per visit, and then there's cost value per visit, which are two very different metrics. I was actually explaining this to one of our account executives the other day. If you have a lab fee of, $1,000, you charge $6,000 for a case, oftentimes you'll get that cost value of, $6,000 divided by 10 appointments, and you have a cost value per visit of $600. Or some practices might take that $1,000 lab fee. So you have 5,000 divided by 10 appointments. You have a cost value per patient visit of 500. But cost per patient visit is really, how many chairs do you have? What is your total operating cost per hour of clinic? And then dividing those metrics out. So let's say, for an example, you have 3,000. Your overhead runs $3,000 an hour. That's your electric, your rent, your staffing, all of that. $3,000 per hour. You operate 10 chairs. You're at $300 per operating hour. But then you have a 30-minute appointment. You're at 150. So let's say with consumables, let's say you've got 6 chairs or so, and you're at an operating cost of $225 per 30-minute appointment. When you start getting into additional refinements and whatnot, you really start hammering in on costs. I mean, you're adding cost value, you're changing your cost value per visit, but you're also eating up a lot of chair time for non-productive appointments, production appointments. So let's just say, as an example, you do 150 aligner starts a year. And out of those 150 aligner starts set aside, you average 270 refinement scans a year. That's usually about the average is what I see, 250 to 300, depending on, the efficiency of the case setup and the quality of the case setup with the doctor. Your refinement scan is 30 minutes. You have, a cost per visit of that 30 minutes at $225. You're at $60,000 in operating costs to do 270 refinement scans. Which, if then you're a practice that has, let's just take the 30 minutes and multiply that by 270, you're at 8,100 minutes, which then you divide that by 60, it's 135 hours. You divide that by 8 hours in a day, you're at 17 days. You have 6 chairs, you divide, 17 days into 6 chairs, you're at 3 full days of chairs. Because oftentimes we'll talk about, you can save 17 days. But if you have 6, 7 chairs 8 chairs, 10 chairs, you're not really saving 17 days of work. You're only saving, 3 or 4 full days because all of those chairs are operating at different capacities. But, if you're at 60,000, 60, $61,000 in expenses, using DM, let's say it's $200 to manage a patient with DM. With Ormco, you get 2 Smart STLs for free with their package. And now I think we're charging for it now. We used to do the 2 Smart STLs for free. But if your total cost is, $30,000 to monitor those patients, and you get, some of the STLs for free, we charge $30, $35 for additional Smart STLs. You can save 50% of your operating costs, even with paying for DM, because of that cost per visit and what that attributes to in a clinic. And so I think oftentimes people don't look at it from that perspective. They just look at it as in, oh yeah, there's a lot of convenience to a Smart STL. Maybe I have patients that, live 5 miles down the road, but have 2 or 3 kids, as I talked about last time, that it's really hard to wrangle everybody to come in for a 30-minute appointment, to take a scan and then bring them back in again to deliver. If you can wipe out those appointments, I mean, you're looking at, $50,000, $70,000, $80,000 worth of actual chair time that you're spending for a refinement, or for multiple refinements. So I think there's a huge value in eliminating some of these unnecessary appointments.
Jason, I think there's.
I know that's really geeky.
Jason, I think there's a joke here. So, do you remember the old Saturday Night Live skit? I mean, I'm gonna age myself. Like, we're talking Dana Carvey versus Michael Dukakis election, and then he comes in, he goes, or is it even Chevy Chase? But I didn't think there would be any math during the. Can you repeat the part about the math? That's a lot. So
yeah, so break it down very simple. Like, what is your overhead per hour? If you don't know your overhead per hour, then we've got a deeper conversation. And then what's your overhead per hour, and divide that by, how many chairs that you have. And then break out into, really you could break it down into what is my overhead per minute. So if I have 10 chairs, that's 600 minutes. So you could divide your production by 600 minutes to figure out, what does it cost per minute to have a butt in the chair. That's excluding really staff time, doctor time. That's just walking in the door and setting somebody in a chair for a 20-minute appointment. And really, to be successful in business, you have to know these type of things. I'm a huge fan of Marcus Lamone. He's a guy he did The Profit. He's CEO of Camping World. Now he's got a show called The Fixer. And he talks about the 3 Ps: people, product, and process. And so I've really gotten into The Fixer lately. And, all he does is drill people on, you have to know your numbers.
Yeah.
And if you don't know your numbers, then you can't figure out how to fix the process.
Let's go back to this, because I think it's an interesting thing, because having been in the industry for 20 years, let's just say my experience, aligners, self-ligating brackets, right? Now we have this technology. And I think what we see a lot of times is you got early adapters or people that are doing it, and they're all in and they're doing it well, and they're experiencing what you just described, right? We see it all the time. You and I do, right? You go into a practice. And I don't think he'd mind that I'm mentioning his name on here, but it was my aha moment was John Warford, right? I'd go to his office and there'd be 120 kids hanging out at that practice during the day. They were out on the street, right, in Bismarck, North Dakota. And I went back randomly, 2 years later, and he's seeing 40 patients a day. Literally went from 120 patients a day to 40 patients a day. And he really did that through, he would argue DM. I think he would say it was DM, aligner, and aligners, right? So I saw it happen in real time. And on top of that, his business grew. But where people struggle with is getting there, right? Like starting someone at the beginning and then getting there.
Yeah, and I don't even think necessary it's not necessarily about, is this aligners versus braces? I think it's just an understanding of business and numbers. When you look at data, and you look at it from like a braces perspective, and you have all of these unnecessary appointments. You've got your aligner checks, your aligner and elastic checks. You have retention checks. You have obs checks. You have same arch wire short, same arch wire long appointments. Like all of these different codes that you look at. If you just have an understanding of what does it cost to put a butt in a chair for a minute, what does that 20-minute appointment cost me? And what are the appointments that I deem unnecessary? And how can I use different technology to eliminate those types of unnecessary appointments? Then it goes back into what I talked a little bit about last time was, how do I make your book of business more profitable if everything else remains stagnant? If I know that I'm going to do 500 starts this year, and I know that next year I'm only going to do the exact same amount of starts, but I want to make more money, how do I make each appointment more profitable? How do I make each patient as a whole more profitable? How do I make the clinic more profitable? And you can't do that unless you have a baseline understanding of what is my cost associated. So then when you start realizing, okay, if I did 800 same archwire short check appointments, comfort visits to pat them on the back, what does that money equate, or what does that time equate to from a financial perspective? Then doctors will start thinking in a different capacity of, okay, if I eliminate all of these appointments, that is worth X amount of money to me. And if they can take that to the team and or use incentives of, hey, last year we did 600 retainer checks. What if we got that down to 300? That 300 is worth, $150 per appointment. Now we can start saying, okay, saving $30,000. Could I use that money and distribute that money to my staff for bonuses, for staff retention? Because, one thing we talk about is staff being the biggest issue. So it's just thinking about the business in a different capacity to really have an understanding of like, how can I take it to the next level without having to change a lot?
Do you think there's a fear of finance in the space? People are afraid to dig in because they're scared of what they might see, and therefore kind of like hear no evil, see no evil,
I mean, do you think, don't we as humans often probably have that fear? I mean, like my wife looks at our bank account like every day. I haven't looked at our bank account in 10 years. I just know there's money in there, and that's good enough for me. My father's never written a check a day in his life. He doesn't know the ins and outs of that stuff. I think there's huge fear in it. And I think that, a lot of people are afraid. They're scared. But it's okay to be scared. It's okay to realize that you can learn new things and figure out, what can I change to be better? What can I do differently to be better? And let's be real. I mean, orthodontists make a lot of money. My wife every day when she's in the kitchen and I'm on a call with a doctor, I'm, doing a different Excel sheet, and she sees the Excel sheet, and I create this new metric and this new formula. I'm like, hey, look at this. And at the end of the day, she's like, they made how much last year? They did what last year? They worked how much? Like they worked 14 days a month. Like they worked 10 days a month. They worked 8 days. Like I should have been an orthodontist. And so, like I've always said, and I might have brought it up last time, like usually when there's a problem in an orthodontic space, the business owner / orthodontist will do one of two things. They'll either throw money at it to fix it, or they'll ignore it. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But, even if they just, if an orthodontist had just a baseline understanding of what is my cost per appointment, from there, I think they'd look at the business in a completely different way. And there's still a lot of money in that. And they're spending quite a bit of money in that. But I don't think it's something to be afraid of. I'd be afraid of, if my collection started outpacing my production. Like if I pulled up Gauge and, I did, you know, 300,000 in production, I did, 410,000 in collections, I'd probably be like, oh shit, we got a problem, because I'm collecting a lot more than I'm producing, which basically just means that you're doing a lot less starts, than you're doing less than one start a month, or you're doing, let me rephrase that, you're doing more debonds than you're doing starts. So if I'm debonding patients at a higher clip than I'm starting patients, that might freak me out. But in the world of orthodontics, I very rarely see that over a 12-month time span. I might see it, different months throughout the year, but typically the average practice is debonding, or they're starting 1.2 patients per debond. So their production always outpaces their collections. But if it wasn't that, that's scary.
Yeah.
But understanding the basics of business, of your business especially, shouldn't be that scary.
It is for a lot of people, though. For sure.
Yeah, Jason, you're a business owner. I mean, shit, I don't know, how many companies do you own?
Too many. Oh, my life is
What,
all fear.
what's your biggest fear as a business owner?
Payroll every 2 weeks. I have a lot of staff across a lot of different businesses. And that nut to the government is big, and healthcare is big. It's all a lot. The rising cost of everything, and the unwillingness of consumers and our clients to pay more because they don't have it. So, things keep getting more expensive, but like people aren't willing to pay us for, for it. So it's tough. It's about,
Jason, what are you doing? What are you doing from a technology perspective to counterbalance some of that? I mean, you're so aggressive in technology and AI, agentic AI, doing all sorts of things. How have you used technology to make those changes and start supplementing cost of overhead with technology?
well, I built a software platform for managing its agentic AI, but for running social, for creating content, for running my emails. Not only because as a person who owns multiple marketing agencies, because I saw kind of the end is near for that standard way of operating, but we needed to be more efficient because I saw the writing on the wall. Clients are not going to pay more. They just don't have the money, especially our larger corporate clients who've been bought by private equity. They have even less because every year they've got to shave 10% off so that private equity firm can make more money. So we've just seen every year needs go up, costs go down over and over again. And so what our whole plan is like, build as many agents as possible to do as many jobs as possible, but using, our technology is based on building a brain for the business. So you're plugging the brain in to do certain things. So if you have a dental monitoring brain, okay, you plug that brain in to run your social media. You plug it in to run your mail because it's got all of the guardrails, the knowledge, everything wrapped into one. It makes life much more efficient. It's one source of knowledge for a business that can contain everything. And that's just makes life way easier.
So the exact same processes, throw that into the ortho practice. So, I think last time on the podcast, I might have talked about, going to McDonald's and how you don't order from anyone at a register anymore. That's all technology driven. Why? Because that was their hardest employee to retain. And so, I think it's important to understand that adapting new technology doesn't mean that we're getting rid of people, but it's allowing us to grow at faster clips without having to replace staff. Because I talked a lot about last time, if you're wanting to grow 20% you're really only going to grow about 10%. You're going to lose 2 to 3 staff members. But if your revenue per full-time employee is a couple 100,000, that 20% growth is going to equate to adding 2 more employees. And and then you just go down this spiral of just continuing to work in your business on a regular basis and not actually taking a step back and working on your business. I was looking at some numbers the other day. So I'm working with this practice, and in 2024 they did 4.9 million. In 2023 they did 4 million. They were 15% higher than the average practice in the SAO. They had 913 contracts come in, which was an 18% increase over what they did the prior year. But they actually decreased their appointments, their completed appointments by 35%, because we focused on all the appointments that you can remove. So if you think about it, they did, well, let me phrase it. They did 15% less appointments. They did 35 less appointments than the SAO average practice. So they did 15% more in production, and they did 35% less completed appointments, because we were able to find technology. And they actually decreased their staff by 2. So 15% more production and 2 less staff. But they didn't fire staff. They had one that was leaving for dental school and one that got pregnant.
Yeah, when people leave now, it's a choice. Do we figure out an agentic solution, or do we go look for a human? Good humans are very expensive and hard to find. Good software and solutions are plentiful and affordable.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually going through a lot of business metrics at a prestigious university in Boston, which I'm not allowed to name, but we all probably know who it is. It's probably one of the most prestigious Ivy League schools.
I used to live on the campus of Harvard. I don't know if that's it, but that's where I lived.
Yeah. But I was
in community college.
Yeah, Quincy Community College.
I was speaking to the residents there, and we were going through business, and Dr. Terry Selke out of Chicago was there, and he was doing a lecture to the students, and he was saying that over the last 10 years he has done all the math and stuff, that it costs him about $65,000 in additional costs to bring on a new employee. Onboarding, training, time, getting to learn the systems, the extra hours spent to onboard somebody. And people don't think about, there's extra costs. Like if I hire somebody tomorrow for $40,000, $45,000, $50,000, it might be $50,000 direct out of my P&L on overhead. But there's a lot of extra costs and expenditures to bring on somebody new. And if we don't take the time to realize that, man, technology can do a lot. There's so many different types of technology. I mean, you've talked about agentic AI, which is something that, we're working on at DM to do some different things. If we don't take the time to really understand some of that stuff and how we can actually learn business in a different metric. My father used to always say the best CE he ever tended was nothing to do with dentistry. He's like, I know dentistry inside and out. I've spent, all my time at Pankey and Dawson and Spear and you name all the CE side of things. But he's like, I don't understand business. Like, help me be a better business leader. Help me be a better mentor. Help me be a better advocate in the business of dentistry. And, so often, you go to the AAO. It's all clinical. When I was at this university, I was asking them who their favorite adjunct professor was. And they said Dan Bills, because Dr. Dan Bills comes in, he doesn't talk about the clinical side of things. They get clinical all day long. He talks about the business and how to be more successful in the book of business. And so, hopefully, podcasts like this will help people think, from a different perspective, that yes, I can get better clinically. Yes, I can change brackets. I can go to Damon and maybe shave 2 or 3 appointments. But what do those appointments cost? What are those appointments worth? Those are the things that you have to really understand and realize.
Yeah. I know, Jason, we're probably coming up on the end of our time window here, but I always tell young people that too. That's interesting that you said that, Dave. Like, they're worried to start their own businesses. They're worried to start their own practices. They're worried about buying a practice because they're like, I don't know how to run this business. There are so many people in this industry, from consultants to guys like you, right? Both of you have businesses, same with us, that helps people run great businesses. Like they are going to get the business support out there to do what they learned in school, without a doubt, right? Um, one little last note. I think this would be interesting, and let's just call it our capstone question here. If you had a 3-chair practice and you had killer efficiencies, right? AI, Brain Bites Creative, all of it, like Lead Sigma, you name it. How many patients could one doctor do with 3 chairs working 14 clinical days a month?
Ooh, I'd have to really think on that. I think it's not necessarily like, to me, it's not necessarily how, like, let's use Dr. Jackie Sheik as an example. You know Dr. Jackie,
I do.
Scott.
Are we
Yeah.
allowed to mention her name on this podcast, you think? She'll be okay with it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll approve it. Jackie runs, and I'm a estimate, 500-600 starts a year, and she's 1,800 square, 2,200 square feet or something like that with her main clinic. And I think it's more of how many starts can you do in a year, maximizing efficiency. I think that's the true key, is what can I get from a total production perspective out of that? And I would say, depending on technology or your share chair aligner to braces ratio, even if you're at 50-50, or even 70-30 braces to aligner split, let's say, I think you could get away with, 500 to 600 starts a year if you maximize the technology that you bring into the practice.
With very few employees.
Yep. That's everything from that's a lot of outsourcing. That's using, companies like Wieldy.ai, or, that help with, revenue cycle management, or, OrthoFi. That's outsourcing your lab stuff and what have you. I think you could easily get away with 500 to 600 starts a year with 3 chairs. If you use the right technology with aligners, the right technology with brackets,
and marketing to drive patients,
and marketing, yeah,
and AI to help control your office and keep it organized. There are a trillion ways to be more effective and efficient. If you are not using tools to be at least 2x more efficient, at least, you
minimum,
are failing. I'm 10x more efficient than I was last year, and that was 10x before that. You've got to be more efficient. That's what it's all going to be about. The world is changing so quickly.
I say 3x. 3x is my baseline. Like, what technology can I use that's going to 3x my return on my investment?
And it's so possible to get so much value out of it. It's really cool.
Yeah.
I want to thank David for being on the show today. Always bringing great conversation. If you want to learn more about dental monitoring, make sure you go check out their website at, is it dentalmonitoring.com?
Yes. I think, I'm kidding.
dentalmonitoring.com. Yeah, it is dentalmonitoring.com. You can go there and book a demo, see all the cool things that they have going on. And if you're interested in becoming part of P.O.P, learning more about P.O.P, there's one man you need to talk to, and that's Mr. Scott Haley. You can go to pop-ortho.com, click on the schedule a meeting button. And Scott, what's going to happen once they do that?
We're going to chat for 20, 30 minutes, learn a little bit about you and your practice, and share the cool things we're doing at P.O.P. And yeah, we just see if you're a good fit. If you're a good fit, we'd love you to jump in and we go from there.
I think, Scott, I think it's not too early to plug your event in January in Arizona. I think, a lot of the stuff that, I've talked about on the podcast on the business side of things. I mean, you have industry experts, and you guys are having an event in January down in Arizona for P.O.P members to really focus more on the business side of things, right?
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah. Actually, it's so funny that you say that because we're going to have, like Scott Hansen's going to lead a breakout on AI stuff. We're going to have Jason's business partner, Savvy, hosting a marketing summit with our doctors. Our doctors will also get together in small groups and talk about their business. I've been in ortho over 20 years. This is a meeting that's unlike any in the sense that there's no one's going to be there trying to sell you anything. This isn't, no offense, Dave. This isn't a DM meeting. This isn't a Normco meeting. This isn't a line meeting. This is a doctor-led meeting, hitting the topics that are of interest to the doctors.
But I will have my hot dog cart outside. I want to thank you both for being here today. It was a great show. Once again, pop-ortho.com and dentalmonitoring.com. And if you want a free marketing analysis for your practice, just go to brainbitescreative.com and click on the contact us button, and Caroline will get you straightened out. On behalf of everybody at the P.O.P podcast, I'm Jason Sirotin. We'll see you next time.